back with Josh's Frogs, and welcome to another evening edition of Frog Talk. Is there a second of possibly a lot of these things? We'll see how successful we make it. So, got a lot of questions from our viewers, I guess, here that we'll answer. So let's go. Have someone asking, when and are Millipedes coming back? We haven't had Millipedes in stock for a while. The reason is we felt we couldn't in good conscience offer field collected millipedes when we were dedicated to captive bred pets. So we stopped that. We do have some millipede populations we're breeding here. It's probably gonna be a bit. I'm gonna be really surprised if we're offering millipedes within a year or so, but we're looking at what it takes to produce those in larger numbers in captivity. The microfauna team that also does a lot with our Isopods and stuff is doing a really good job with those. Do you have an idea of when you'll start selling giant toads? We have a few species of giant toads here. The big ones are the smooth-sided toads and then also our Asian river toads. Hopefully spring brings around some nice showers and a bit of barometric pressure change, and hopefully we'll have some of those available next summer. What's your favorite frog setup you have done? Generally it's the last one I've done. I tend to kind of like to tweak things and do everything. One of my favorites was a big build I did for a private library that was about 4 feet across, 3 feet deep, and about 6 or 7 feet high, and it was this really cool paludarium. A lot of fun. Best plants for bioactive white tree frog enclosures. Ones that'll either put up to the white tree frogs or grow back quickly when those fat frogs break them. Really good options are various philodendron and pothos are pretty way up there. Is infrared light okay for a white tree frog? Absolutely. Still pay attention to temperature and keep in mind that using that infrared light, just like any basking light, is going to dry things out to make sure it's not getting too dry there. Can you breed snake? We've actually produced California king snakes here. We produced 4 of them this year and they sold pretty quickly at a show. But I think you're going to see some snakes in our future in the next year or so. How can I get my beardie to eat a salad? You got to cut down on those other things. So you can slow down on feeding them other foods, especially the ones he really likes. If he's in good shape, that bearded dragon is definitely not going to starve going without food for a few days. You can also try mixing in some of those prey items into the salad so they kind of accidentally chew up some of the salad while they're going after those. You can also include really brightly colored things. My favorite was to chop up a little bit of red bell pepper, really finely diced, and mix it with the food. Bearded dragons a lot of times are attracted to really brightly colored objects, and that's tended to go. Top 5 favorite frogs for beginners. Just 5. Okay. Depends on the beginner and what they're wanting. I'll go through and just say, let's just do 2. If you're looking for a frog that you want to hold, play around with, it's going to be really hard to beat a white tree frog, even though yellow-spotted climbing toads are way up there. They're just a little more expensive. If you're looking for frogs to look at, your dart frogs, of course, which my favorite is and will always be Dendrobates leucomelis, the bumblebee dart frog. They were my first dart frogs about 20 years ago, and they're still by far still my favorite, and those frogs are actually still alive and kicking, which is pretty neat and doing well. For frogs for an aquarium, Pipa parva, this cool little aquatic frog. They get about yay big, and they actually lay the eggs and tadpoles hatch out of the back of the female, which is pretty cool. For cultivating fruit flies, how often should you make a new culture using the old flies? Depends. Starting out, I recommend, if you have like 1 tank with 2 or 3 frogs, make a culture a week. It'll be more fruit flies than you need, but that'll kind of get you off on the ground running, and if something happens, it's better to have more fruit flies than 2 fewer fruit flies. After a while, generally 1 culture every 2 weeks or so per tank approximately is safe. Coming to Bay Area, California soon. I don't have that list in front of me, but we're doing nearly 100 shows in 2022. We're back with a vengeance. That's going to be updated on the website shortly, so if you hop on over to joshsfrogs.com, bottom left there'll be a link that says trade shows. You click that. Right now it shows shows through the end of this year. We're going to be adding to that really shortly, but we have a lot of them planned. Favorite frog? There's too many, I can't tell you. Up there, if I were going to talk a little more broadly, the genus Atelopus, the harlequin toads. They're near and dear to my heart. They're super, super cool. I remember seeing pictures of them years ago, and even some wild-caught animals years ago when I was probably 7 or 8 in a local pet store. And just amazing animals. They've been hit really, really hard by chytrid. And just this last year, we were able to, a couple of our conservation grants were aimed at preserving that species or extending their range. They're just really, really cool animals. Some of them actually breed close to waterfalls where their calls aren't loud enough to be heard, so they actually communicate by waving, which is really cool. You can have these frogs in a tank that are sitting there waving at each other, which is pretty cool. What should you do if your cleanup crew isn't getting all the poops? Number one, I love your grammar. It's very awesome, spot on. You know, cleanup crew. To most people, that are your springtails, your isopods, those bugs that are in your substrate, that crew that is cleaning up, they're your tank janitors. So if they're not getting all the poops, we need to look and make sure, is the substrate appropriate to where it can house a large enough population of cleanup crew to take care of the poops? Did you put enough cleanup crew in? Or sometimes you'll have frogs that are just really, really good at demolishing that cleanup crew and eating them. See if that's happening. And then also, are the poops in a place where they're going to be eaten? So geckos are notorious for putting their poops on glass, and you're not going to get springtails and isopods climbing glass to eat the poop. You just have to scrape or spray that down to the substrate. You can also help a little bit by burying it, and that way more organisms can get in there and eat it without getting eaten themselves. Can we see your White's tree frog room? I'm on the 5th floor. The White's tree frog room is on the 2nd floor, so I'm sorry you can't. But we're really excited. We're moving a lot of stuff around, so come probably February or March, expect a big new facilities tour at Josh's Frogs, and we'll definitely show that off. We've expanded a lot. We've actually got a few really, really unusual looking White's tree frogs that are growing out that are really excited that I can't wait to show you guys in the future. Is the Owasso store open to public by appointment? It's open for order pickup, but with the pandemic, we are closed to the public and not currently doing tours. Trust me when I say a bunch of us cannot absolutely wait to resume doing tours and field trips and things of that nature. What's the easiest starter frog that's low maintenance? White's tree frogs have to be way up there. Pacman frogs as well. Both of those are really good to check out. Best plants for dart frogs, the ones on joshsfrogs.com. They're all pretty great. There's hundreds to choose from. If you're not sure where to go, we have some real basic dart frog plant kits for different size tanks that get you started. You want a variety of stuff, those tropical plants that are going to take high humidity. A lot of times you want color and pattern so they're attractive, but you want usable surfaces, so broad, strong leaves that the frogs can be on. Some plants like bromeliads have a tank in the middle. They actually hold a little bit of water. But there's philodendrons, ferns, Hoya, Dischidia, peperomia, pilea. There's more of them out there to check out. So I'd really look at that. It's hard to say the best. If I had to pick one, it'd probably be pothos. You can keep dart frogs completely happy on just pothos. They'll lay eggs on the leaves. They provide a lot of cover, and they're pretty much impossible to kill. How much is shipping? That completely depends on where you live and what you're ordering. But I will say that it's easy response. Flat rate $39.99 for our live animals. So our frogs, our reptiles, our amphibians, our fish. It's also really cool we did that. It's actually free. Yes, free priority overnight shipping if you order $300 or more animals in the order. So that doesn't include feeder insects, but just specific to our reptiles and amphibians and our fish. But pretty good deal to check out. Tips for a first-time Pac-Man frog owner. Really pay attention to temperature and humidity. That's true across the board with pretty much any animal, but 99% of the time when there's an issue, it can be traced back to temperature or humidity being off. They don't move around, so don't expect a lot from your frog. They're really sit and wait predators, you know, and they're a lot of fun. Make sure you keep them warm. A lot of people keep them at room temp, and sometimes, you know, 74 or so, 76. You know, during the winter, you know, keeping your house at 68 to 70 or so can be a little cool for them. How are the frogs housed before someone purchases them? That depends widely on the type of frog. We keep a lot of our breeders in bioactive setups. A lot of our frogs that we breed in quantity, we keep in, you know, glass aquaria where we're changing the substrate and clean them very frequently to keep them. Some animals we found it's really important especially when they're really young, they're really close to a food source, so we'll keep them in smaller containers until they get a bit bigger and move them up. We've spent, well, since 2004, you know, so 17 years, kind of really dialing in that practice to figure out what's like that optimal care for that animal. What we do isn't set in stone. We're always re-examining it and changing it, and just getting it that much better. But it really depends on the specific species. Can White's tree frogs be kept alone? Absolutely, but who wouldn't want to buy two? But that being said, they don't get lonely. They're perfectly fine. They make great pets either way. How do you know when your frogs are ready for larger fruit items? A lot of times you can carefully try one, and if you see them spit it out, kind of fling it away with their front feet, you know, it was probably a little too big. A very general rule is if you look at that frog's head from above, the distance between its eyeballs, you don't want the prey item to ever be larger than that. There's obviously some exceptions like feeding night crawlers to White's tree frogs or Pac-Man frogs, but that's a pretty good general rule. Will you start bringing tarantulas to Expos? Oh yeah. We're really expanding the tarantula department. We have 4 full-time employees that all they do is breed and care for tarantulas up here. Expect a lot better offerings, a lot wider variety on the website, as well as it shows, and all that expertise with it. I mean, some of these guys, it's incredible. They've been doing this for a decade plus and are really, really passionate hobbyists and breeders. What is your favorite part of working at Josh's Frogs? Ooh, that's an easy one. Me personally, it is it's a lot of things. It's been a really cool, this was a part-time college gig for me 14 years ago. But one of my favorite things is about taking and overcoming obstacles. A lot of times we see a problem, like we want to make animal care more efficient, or things of that nature, and then designing processes, and then a lot of times what become our Josh's Frogs branded products to help solve those. A good example is biobedding. Years ago I used to breed a fair number of Europlatus or leaf-tail geckos, and I would miss eggs sometimes, so I wanted a substrate that was free draining, that I could have deep enough so I didn't need a false bottom layer. Keep plants in, and then the eggs could actually incubate it, and that was kind of the precursor of biobedding, and then we've developed it over and over until we released that product. That kind of development, especially working with really passionate employees who are knowledgeable, and kind of pairing together to figure out the best way to solve some of these issues and create some just really awesome products to bring to you guys, is one of my favorite. Most difficult obstacle you guys have had to overcome? COVID was rough. I'm sure it's probably been rough for a lot of y'all too. That changed drastically on how we had to interact with each other. It saw a lot of sale numbers shoot up as pet stores and shows closed down, so I had to kind of scramble to get orders out the door. Good problem to have, but a problem nonetheless. But we used to get together once a week, all in one big lunchroom, and have a pizza lunch together. You know, kind of crazy to think of a 60, 70 employees getting together and doing that, but we did it every week and talked about what was bigger, better, or different. We've had to switch all that to virtual, as well as a lot of other meetings and interactions. And while we're starting to come out of that, that was one of the biggest obstacles we had to work through. Just really changed the way we communicate and figuring that out. What is the difference between Josh's ABG and the Josh's new dart frog biobedding? It's really cool. We identified tree fern. It's not exactly environmentally friendly. Tree fern fiber is literally tree ferns ground up. And then we use it in a substrate. It's really popular in the orchid hobby. It drains really well. And that's one of the original ingredients in ABG mix. It's an awesome substrate. It takes a long time for those tree ferns to grow. It's also, there were a lot of supply issues, especially during COVID. So we did a lot of digging and did a lot of research and a lot of experiments figuring out a good alternative. We wanted to make ABG, just sans tree fern, that performed the same. So that's what that new dart frog biobedding is. We wanted to make sure we could still have something for our customers whenever we weren't able to get tree fern or anything in. Best ground cover plant for cave geckos? Once again, there's a bunch of them. There's this really cool, a lot of the smaller pileas that creep along the ground, one's commonly called creeping Charlie. Baby tears, things like that are really cool. Cover up a lot of the base. Selaginellas or spike mosses are another sure winner. What do you love more, your frogs, bugs, or other critters? What's your favorite? These are all my children. I can't choose favorites, but I do have some favorites. There's a lot of cool stuff. The neat thing about working at Josh's Frogs is you see me a lot, but you don't see the 70 some odd other employees who are just as passionate as me that work with our live stuff day to day. So, you know, I have my personal favorites, but the cool thing is we have a lot of other people with their personal favorites that are doing an awesome job to produce those too. If I had to pick one thing in the building, once again, I go back to it, those bumblebee dart frogs and the Dendrobates zuccomellis. First dart frog and still one of my favorites. Who must one bribe to win a contest? Asking for a friend, naturally. Fair enough. It's actually pretty easy. You just take a $100 bill and a self-addressed stamped envelope and you send it in and you might win $100. What inspired you to start Josh's Frogs? That's an easy question to answer because I didn't start Josh's Frogs. I've just worked for Josh's Frogs for a long time. I've known Josh for, a decade and a half. This was a way for him to support his hobby. He loved keeping dart frogs. Through college and stuff, there wasn't a lot of extra income, so he realized he could buy some of the supplies like fruit fly cups, stuff like that, in bulk, resell some of it, and actually afford to keep dart frogs that way. So that was the starting of Josh's Frogs, and it's kind of just grown from there. It eventually was turned into a business because he realized his preferred line of work wasn't going to leave necessarily a lot of easy family time on nights and weekends. And so he invested in it and grew it, and that's how we got where we are today. What is the best way to keep frogs warm in the winter without drying them out? Honestly, you're probably going to have to mist more frequently or reduce ventilation. If that's not an option in a vivarium, sometimes putting a submersible aquarium heater in the false bottom so it's always underwater can be a great way to do that. That can help. By far, instead of warming the tank, the best thing is to warm the space or that room though. If I were to keep a group of 2 to 3 Amazon milk frogs or white street frogs, would I need them to all be female? Nope. They're fine. You don't need to worry about sexes there. The way most of us keep our frogs, a lot of the times these frogs, they need to be put into a rain chamber or a specialized enclosure to breed. Even though we have had Amazon milk frogs sometimes breed in their water dish. They're actually tree hole breeders in the wild. There's no harm in that. You just might end up with a bunch of eggs that you either need to humanely dispose of or grow into your own army of frogs. As a new frog owner, soon, so you're not there yet, good job, you're doing your research, what behavior should I watch out for that would indicate sickness? That's a little difficult to answer. Broadly, it's a change in behavior. So you kind of need to know what to expect of that frog. If the frog's not eating, if it's losing weight, if it once was moving around a lot and now it's not, if it has a color change, sometimes that can be like, a lot of times they tend to get darker when they're stressed, spending an abnormal amount of time in a water bowl, or if there's any kind of discoloration. There's a common symptom called red leg, sign of oftentimes of an internal bacterial infection where you get red patches on kind of the inside thigh of a frog. It's noticeable there because the skin's really thin. You can kind of see a lot of the musculature. So it's really just changes in behavior, things like that. Keep an eye on that. And then the first thing when you see that kind of stuff, examine. Did the habitat change? Did you switch to a different brand of substrate? Or did the temperature change, the humidity change, something along there? A lot of times you can address those things a lot easier before it gets serious. Here's one, how do you ship isopods out of state? Isopods, like a lot of our invertebrates, are heavily controlled by the USDA. We're a containment facility by the USDA that opens us up to inspections. We also have contacts at the USDA we work with to ensure we have all the proper permits for the states we ship into. We only work with species of isopods that are completely 100% legal to ship, and we maintain the permits for those. A lot of the isopods in the hobby don't have interstate permit travel, and we do not work with those at this facility. How often do you guys stock inventory? I know there's been some some out of stocks for quite a while. The pandemic has really messed up the supply chain. Fortunately, we've fairly recently hired and brought on Linda, our purchaser, to help us keep things in stock. She's done a great job, and we actually see stock increasing nearly every day. We do inventory constantly, so we do it when it comes in, it goes out, and then it's checked once every couple months or so to make sure it's accurate. Depending on the brand and everything, we could be restocking as frequently as once a week, all the way to sometimes it's several months. So I'd make sure to check up whenever anything on our website is out of stock. There's a link that says notify me when this item's back in stock. You can click it, put in your email address, and you'll get an email whenever we do have it again. How do you keep your Eco Earth and your Pacman tank constantly moist? I miss frequently and mix it around and just wonder if you had any tips. That can actually be pretty difficult, and that's one reason why we recently released our Biobedding Pacman. It holds humidity a little bit better and allows them to burrow, and then the solids it does have for drainage in it are small, and they can either easily pass them or spit them back up if they do get them in their mouth. And that's how we actually addressed that by switching the substrate it was on, so something that was a little bit more user-friendly. So that's the majority of questions we have. There's so many, I'm not gonna be able to get them all. So anyway, if you have other questions, reach out. Jump on our website, joshsfrogs.com. We have Twitter. We have, what's that thing people are into nowadays? TikTok. You can see frogs dance and things like that. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. You can always hit us up via email, info@joshsfrogs.com, or pick up a cell phone or landline phone if you're into that. Call us 800-691-8178. Once again, this is Zach Brinks for Frog Talk, and thanks for stopping by.
Thanks so much for watching this video. Here at Josh's Frogs, bringing nature to your doorstep is more than just our mission, it's our passion. We want you to have the most successful experience possible, so we're going to be here for you before, during, and after your purchase, whether that's with our captive-bred animals, plants, insects, or the wide variety of their care products on our website. You always have access to our dedicated customer service team, on-site nature experts, hundreds of free articles via our blog, and many more videos right here on our YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe. We're always happy to help. Just shoot us an email or give us a call. You can find all of this information and more at joshsfrogs.com. Thanks again, and see you next time.